My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I was married for 5 years when I carried a weight in my heart that I couldn't quite put into words. David, my husband, was by many people's standards, a decent man. He put in a lot of effort, provided for the family, and never failed to pay the bills on time. But behind closed doors, life was neither as easy nor as satisfying as it from the outside it appeared. When I first married David, I thought I had found my forever. We met in college, and while sparks didn't exactly fly, he was steady, reliable, and kind in his own way. I mistook stability for happiness, and over time I began to realize that what I truly longed for wasn't being met. It had nothing to do with luxury or even concern romance. It was about being seen, being heard, and being understood. And those were the challenges my husband faced to offer. As the years went by, the distance between us grew. David was buried himself in work, often coming home late, exhausted and uninterested in conversation. Whenever I tried to share loneliness, how I felt about my day, about my worries, about my dreams, his responses were short and distracted. "We'll talk later," he would say. Or, "I'm worn out." Sarah appeared to show up later. I felt invisible in my own home, like a shadow, moving around him rather than a partner right next to him. It was during those I met, after years of quiet loneliness, Mark Turner, my neighbor across the street. Mark had moved into the neighborhood with Emily, his daughter, following the cancer death of his wife. From the beginning, there was something approachable in his own way. He constantly waved every time he saw me outside. He inquired about my I was doing and never made me feel like I was a burden. Initially, our conversations were small, just casual. Conversations about the weather between neighbors, the garden, or the neighborhood watch meetings. But over time, they grew deeper. I found that I could confide in him about minor annoyances and things I never bothered to tell David anymore, because I was aware he would ignore me. Mark, patience, on the other hand, listened with patience. He had this calm presence, a way of making me feel as though my words are true mattered. It wasn't long before Mark started noticing things about me that even David overlooked. He noticed when I changed my hairstyle, when I seemed unusually tired, or when my smile didn't quite reach my eyes. He asked questions and waited for the answers. He remembered details like how I loved old mystery novels or how I couldn't start my morning without coffee brewed just a little stronger than most people liked it. One rainy afternoon, after a particularly challenging disagreement with David about his long hours at work, I ended up sitting on the porch steps, observing the storm clouds intently. My heart felt heavy, as though all the unspoken words of the past 5 years were pressing toward me. That's when Mark walked over, holding a raincoat. Without a word, he sat beside me and handed me a cup of tea he had just completed. We sat there in silence for a while, the rain tapping against the umbrella in a rhythmic manner until what Mark taught me I finally let the tears fall. Mark didn't try to fix anything or offer void of value. He just let me cry. He let me feel without judgment or discomfort. And in that moment I realized he had given me something David hadn't in years: emotional space, a safe place to simply be myself. That day was the beginning of a shift. I started to recognize that Mark's gift to me was not grand gestures or promises. It was consistency, empathy, and understanding. Over the next few months, he helped me with things David never thought to notice. When the faucet in the kitchen started leaking, David brushed it off, saying he'd get to it someday. But Mark came over the next morning and fixed it, without making a big deal out of it. When Emily had a school play, he invited me to watch, and afterward, we laughed about the kids forgetting their lines. When I felt overwhelmed with loneliness, he simply reminded me that I wasn't as alone as I thought. Mark wasn't the focus, substituting David because that was not point. What touched me deeply was how he did what my husband had not done before, possible in 5 years. He made me feel valued. He reminded me of the person I had been before the silence of my I was swallowed whole by marriage, and I loved it. Not in the way people might think, but in a manner that brought something back within me. Nevertheless, I struggled with the turning point. Guilt. Part of me wondered if I was betraying David by finding comfort in someone else's presence. But the truth was there was nothing inappropriate about it. Mark never crossed boundaries. He never disrespected my marriage. What he did was offer the kind of human kindness that everyone deserves, but not everyone receives. The turning point came one evening when David came home, late again, distracted and irritable. I attempted to disclose a problem I was having with my car, but he brushed me off without listening. Later, I found myself outside again, and Mark noticed. "Sarah, you should be heard," he said. Me kindly. Those words echoed in my mind for days. I realized then that the problem wasn't Mark, and it wasn't even genuinely David. It was the fact that I had silenced my own needs for too long. I had allowed myself to fade into the background of my marriage, thinking it was selfish to want more. However, Mark's did what David couldn't, was remind me that I had the right to want love, attention, and respect. That realization changed everything.